My name is Corey Salemi. Again, I lead product management and product development for Wilscot Mobile Mini. We've got a variety of topics to go through today, and as the title, very wordy, might suggest, right, there's a few key things that we'll want to go through, from customer-driven innovation all the way through sustainability, and then really want to spend some time on temporary space solutions, because that is what we do at Wilscot Mobile Mini, and ultimately we think it has a lot of value to the facilities management space. So before we jump in, just a quick slide on who we are. I know that can be kind of hard to read depending on where you are in the room. So I think it boils down to a few key things. We are North America's leader of temporary space solutions. Really what that means is, from office trailers to storage containers to even large format tents and clear span structures, we can provide pretty much any format of space that you need for your project or your site. As we'll go through today, we provide very flexible spaces, dynamic spaces that can grow and scale up or down as you go. We'll give some examples of that as we go through it. And when you put that all together, we have north of 500,000 assets across 250 branch locations in North America, right? And we're deploying anywhere between 70 to 80 million square feet of space per year, and we can deploy as high as 130 million square feet of space per year. But for many in the room, and there's not a ton in the room today, but for many of you that doesn't matter, right? What matters is how we can serve you at a local level, and that's a key piece of our strategy and how we go to market with our customers. We focus very locally. A lot of our local Baltimore and Virginia team is actually in the room with us here today, just kind of representing how we can go in any market and really deliver that local level of service and build those relationships with you to make sure that we give you what you need. We'll talk through a couple of things at the end of the list there, just around the customers that we serve, right? We do serve very diverse industries, from facilities management to construction, all the way through retail. No one customer for us is more than 3% of our revenue. So contrary to a lot of companies, we're not beholden to a singular entity or a small number of customers. We are truly focused on the 80,000 plus customers that we serve, and making sure that we maximize each and every relationship, and ultimately, do what's necessary to provide them with value and a good standard of service. So that's all the time that we'll really spend on us and Wilscot Mobile Mini as a company. Now, I do think we have some pretty compelling solutions respected to facilities management, and that's where we really want to spend the brunt of our time today. As I mentioned on the prior slide, we do serve a very broad market. So if you look at this as like any particular city or faceless market or MSA out there, we serve pretty much every industry in it. So from construction sites to airports to security, right? We touch pretty much everywhere. We even work with Walmarts and Targets for seasonal demand. We store everything from frozen turkeys to excess inventory in the holiday season. So we do a little bit of everything, and that's really unique because it means that we're not overly focused on construction, facilities management, retail. We aim to figure out how we can apply our products to broader industries and ultimately make sure that we've got a solution for everybody, or that we can customize our solutions for everybody. So jumping to kind of the title of the day, Evolving Sustainable Space Solutions for Facilities Management Through Customer-Driven Innovation. It is a mouthful. It is a lot on there. There's really three key things that we're going to focus on today, and I want you guys to remember. First and foremost is the word evolving. Everything that we do at Wilscot Mobile Mini is an evolution. So we're always looking, and we'll talk through this process here in a second, but we're always looking to get better, to put our customers at the center of everything we do, and there's no point in time where we remain flat-footed or static. We're always trying to develop better products, better ways to serve our customers, so that's particularly important. Sustainable space solutions is another place that we're going to spend a lot of time on. There's a couple of key reasons. Sustainability, for those in the leasing and rental space, makes a lot of sense. It's just good business practice. But also the sustainable outputs of what we do have a lot of merit in the marketplace compared to other solutions that you might look at, like traditional brick and mortar. And then the final piece there is obviously customer-driven innovation, right? Again, I'll say it for probably the fifth time already, and you'll hear it 10 more times as I go through the presentation. Everything we do is driven by the customer. We hate to operate in a silo and sit there and think that we know you better than you do. So a lot of our feedback loops, a lot of the products that we're driving are very focused on getting out in the field, interacting with you in your spaces, your workspaces, your storage spaces, and understanding how we can do better. So again, very wordy title, but there is a lot to unpack in there and a lot that we're going to go through throughout the presentation. And I will try and stop. We do have, again, a smaller audience. It's a little bit more intimate, so would like to get your feedback and your questions as we go versus saving them for the end. So please stop me at any point. I'll periodically pause in between slides as we go through the deck. All right, our learning objectives for today. Primarily, we're going to talk about some market trends. I think it's probably been a frequent topic this week, but the pandemic has largely changed how people go to work and what they expect out of the workplace. And so we're going to spend some time going through that. We'll go through some of the benefits of temporary space, again, versus something like brick and mortar or more traditional commercial real estate. We'll go through some industry best practices in sustainability, so we'll talk through our sustainability model. And then finally, there's one particular product, and we have it on display here at the show. That is our Flex product. It has particular relevancy to facilities management, and we think it's a great product for your needs, and we'll go through some of the reasons for why that is. All right. So this is the group participation part, or one of them. So I'll ask, does anybody in the room recognize what that product is on the screen? I realize it's a little bit small, and nobody from that side can answer. Does anybody recognize what that is? No? It's a job trailer, there you go. Has anybody in the room, show of hands, worked in one of these before in your career, or been in one? Most, yeah, there you go. All right, we're getting there. So most in the room have worked in one. Again, hard to see up there on the screen, but I'll describe it for you the best I can. How many have worked in a job trailer that has been messy? Maybe it's got some old wood paneling, some nice vinyl tile that's slipping up, right? It's generally a pretty messy workplace. It's a place that when people come in every morning, oftentimes it's not a very forgiving spot, or it's not a place where they want to sit there and work all day and spend 8, 9, 10 hours. And this has largely been the industry standard for decades, right? These job site trailers that are dated, messy, don't provide the quality and level of facilities that people are coming to expect. Next one here should be pretty straightforward. That's a storage container. It's one of the largest commodities in the world. Millions and millions of storage containers pass through shipping lanes, end up on job sites, or end up for facility storage, right, day in and day out. Same scenario there. I think one of the big trends that we'll talk about that we've seen start to happen is that where storage containers used to be a place to kind of dump excess inventory or store supplies, storage containers are now becoming actually a space where people are almost living and working out of. So you can see there in some of the pictures, you've got plan tables, right? People are running electric to these containers. And so we've done a lot here at Wilscot Mobile Mini to try and address that trend and not just focus on the office space, but also look at the storage container, which is probably one of the most basic assets out there. It's a steel box with 4 walls, right? And make sure that that is also something that's desirable to a customer and that we improve that space for them as well. And then finally, relief. So, that's a little bit facetious there, but people need relief on the job site, right? And that comes in the form of sanitation products, restrooms, things like that, but also shade, right? And so, we do large format tents and clear span structures, probably not as relevant to most at the show this year, but we also do smaller format tents and clear span structures that can go between containers, that can stand alone next to office spaces and storage spaces, and sometimes, particularly in hotter climates, just getting that relief in that shade or that break area can be a huge win for an employee and ultimately the employer. So I'll pause there for a second. Any questions, any stout disagreement from what I've stated? Does this largely represent what you guys understand as the storage and office space? Good. All right. Small audience. I'm going to keep calling on you guys. So let's talk through some trends then. Accelerants of change, right? So what is changing in the marketplace? What have we seen really in the past 2 or 3 years? Pandemic is obviously a big one. Again, I'm sure that's gotten a lot of airtime or face time throughout various presentations, so I won't hone in too much on that. But I think one of the first pieces, again in the title, the rise of sustainability. Sustainability has been around for decades, right? It's not brand new, but it has become a lot more significant and prominent with how companies are going to market and positioning themselves for customers. So if you look at the statistics there on the screen, almost every S&P 500 company reports on sustainability in some fashion today, right? That was not the case a decade ago. It was closer to 40%. So you can see how quickly that evolution is kind of gaining steam. And then if you think about honing in on temporary space or buildings account for more than 1/3 of global carbon emissions and more than 1/3 of global energy consumption. So it's a really big piece of sustainability where if you focus your efforts there, you get some pretty merited returns and you have an opportunity to really save energy, cut emissions, and we'll talk through some of our products that do that. As you jump to the next piece here, well-being. So one thing the pandemic did do is force a lot of reflection for employees everywhere. So as people were forced to work from home, first thing they had to do is go figure out where would they work in their home. And oftentimes they had to put together a home office. They had to realize what was important to them. Was it being spread out? Was it being able to stand throughout the day and not sit behind a computer screen for 10 hours? And so it solicited a lot of internal reflection for people's employees, right? And as employers started to try and bring people back into the workplace, you kind of saw that accelerated even further, because now companies have to make it worthwhile to take that 30, 40, 50-minute drive into the office every day. And so some of the interesting things that you see up there, I think probably the most interesting of those two is Steelcase, which is a massive furniture supplier, actually did a study with their customers and found that almost 2/3 of their customers now are providing some type of ergonomic solution, at least as an option to their employees. So think like standing desks, better chairs, things like that. So there is this desire and this will to have a higher quality workspace when you come in every day. And there are additional studies that have been done that show this directly correlates to productivity, employee happiness, and ultimately the longevity of that employee staying with a particular company. And then the final piece here, specific to facilities management. This is a shifting workforce, right? And it's not just a facilities management characteristic. This is across the entire industry. So average age of facilities management employees is 49 years old, right? They're starting to age out of the workforce. And much like construction, retail, everywhere else, you're getting a much younger generation coming in that has these high expectations for what they're getting out of a space. And as the jobs continue to grow, as stated there on the screen, right, as the jobs continue to grow in this space, there's going to be more and more fighting for those employees. And how are you going to win those employees? It's with the nicer workspaces, the comfortability going to work, the prioritization of healthcare and facilities on site. And so these are a couple of solutions that we'll go into and some of the areas that we've really tried to react to as we went through the pandemic and the years that followed. And then as you just jump through here, these are some of the topics that we'll talk about. So improved air quality, renewable energy, right, ergonomic furniture solutions in the space. So just kind of setting the stage here, these are some of the things that led to the products that we'll go through in this session. I do want to start, I mentioned this earlier, right, everything for us is through the lens of the customer. So again, that's probably the 7th time I've said it, 10 more to go. We have a very customer-centric approach. So anything that we do starts in a very robust discovery phase. So when we look at our industries, typically if we have an idea, maybe a customer mentions a pain point to us, or we hear internally that there's something that we need to correct in how we go to market, we spend, call it 3 to 6 months, really investigating that problem, understanding, is this a problem worth solving for our broader customer base? Are there market studies out there? Are there customers that we can directly reach out to and better understand that problem? And then once we've got kind of a hypothesis on how to fix it, we actually spend a lot of time in the field, on sites, with our local sales reps, with our local customers, understanding that problem in actuality. So, you know, something that you hear on the phone or through an email might actually be very different when you get on site. And so we spend our time going to hundreds of job sites a year to really focus in on what those problems are and then ultimately prioritize where we can provide the most value for our customers. From there, we start thinking through solutions. Right? Like any company, we start working through how can we fix this problem. We might work up some prototypes. We might try some different models to engage our customers more. And we go back out to the field and say, hey, we want to make sure we heard you properly the first time. Is this truly the problem that you're having with our products and our business today? And is what we're presenting to you an adequate way of fixing it? And then our kind of final step here before we bring anything to market is a pilot program. So a lot of times we'll go back to those same customers where this journey started. We might go to brand new customers that maybe didn't even complain about this in the first place, and we understand if we're taking the right step before we even launch it. So really the point here, customer engagement every step of the way, but also at the end of the day, everything that we put forth in the marketplace is very heavily vetted. We want to make sure that we're taking the right steps forward versus steps back. All right, so shifting gears a little bit to sustainability, and we'll hit this periodically throughout, but I mentioned earlier that inherently our business model is sustainable, right? We rent, we lease assets. So the longer life that we can get out of a particular product, the more times we can rent it, the more that we make money. So naturally, Wilscot Mobile Mini is incentivized to be sustainable, to minimize the amount of maintenance needed over a product's life, right? And to ultimately ensure that we can keep that asset in our portfolio for as long as possible. So making that office trailer look as though it's like new for a 30+ year life. Same thing with storage containers. And then when you look at how that actually comes together on the job site or on a security site, a vaccine site, whatever it may be, we provide everything that's shown there. This is just a generic kind of construction example, but we provide everything that's shown there on the screen, and by the time that job's over, it's like we were never there. One of the better examples, and there's a lot more information on our website on this, we did a project for the University of San Diego where they had all this protected wildlife and all these protected plants, trees, things like that around their facilities. They really needed to find a way to put temporary facilities up while they renovated their brick and mortar space. We're actually able to go through with our Flex product, which we'll go through in a second here. We're actually able to navigate around that wildlife. We're able to go up and actually shape the building and space around those protected trees in that environment to ensure that we didn't disturb any of it. And ultimately, when we took that project down about 6 months later, you couldn't even tell that we had close to 10,000 square feet of space set up on the site there. So that's really our goal, right, is when you do business with us, we want to make sure that when we leave the project at the end of it, you didn't even know we were there. Hopefully you don't have to think too much about us at the beginning. You do business with us, your space shows up, you forget about us for the project life cycle, and then we pull it away at the end and it was like we were never there. A couple of the statistics along the bottom, we already talked about the amount of space that we have. We talked about the amount of assets that we deploy every single year. I think some of the important ones are actually toward the far right. So again, 30-year asset life, and in a lot of cases, it's a second life that we're giving these products. So we buy and produce very little new fleet. So very rarely are we making new mobile offices. Very rarely are we buying brand new storage containers. In a lot of cases, we are finding used assets. We're purchasing that used asset that otherwise might be disposed of, discarded, or left to rot on a yard. And we're refurbishing that asset, getting it into a like-new state, and then ultimately renting that for another 20 to 30 years. So really pulling things that would have otherwise gone into a landfill or been discarded and providing them a purposeful life within our portfolio. And then the last piece shown there, so 30 to 40% of the deliveries that we make for containers are from site to site. So when you think about emissions, we drive millions and millions of miles per year to deliver our products. We significantly reduce carbon emissions by actually picking containers up on one site, and rather than taking it all the way back to our branch location and deploying it again to another customer, we'll actually pick it up from one site and take it to the next site that's closer in proximity so that we're cutting down on the wasted mileage and kind of deadheading, if you will, that would otherwise have to be done. So a lot of practices kind of go into this, little things like that, but it adds up. When you think about 30 to 40% of 150,000 container deliveries a year, it becomes significant pretty quickly. All right, so talking a little bit, we call it a circular economy. It's a fancy way of saying reduce, reuse, recycle. We'll start off with, and again, I know this is particularly small, even probably for some in the front row, but when you think about alternatives to temporary space, it's really commercial real estate, brick and mortar, build a small facility, try and put something up to serve your purpose at a point in time. When you think about what we do, right, permanent construction can be wasteful. I mean, I think if you look at the commercial real estate market over just the past 2 to 3 years and how many offices are sitting vacant, the wasted energy, the wasted space, that really characterizes all of it for you. But it is waste. It is a huge commitment for any company that endeavors to go that route, right? You are building something that is going to exist and you're going to be encumbered and stuck with it for as long as that building stands. The beauty of temporary space is that we can deploy it one day, and we do a ton of special events. We can deploy something on a Friday, be gone by Monday. So we can go up and down very quickly. If your needs change, if you go through a big boom and you hire 10 people and you need to add additional office space, we can do that. And then if things flatten out a little bit or you plateau in your business and you need to reduce or you need to move those employees elsewhere, we can trim that space down to whatever size is adequate for you at that point in time. So very flexible. And then, we talked about this a little bit on the last slide, but when you think about our cycle over 30 years, typically we'll refurbish a unit 8 or 9 times over that 30 years. So if it's a mobile office, it comes back to us. Sometimes they sit out for 4 to 5 years. Naturally, you're going to have some loose tiles, some holes in the walls. We'll fix that up, again, make it kind of rent ready and brand new for the next customer, and then we'll get it back out on rent. And we'll continue to do that. And to reiterate my earlier point, when you think about it, the more money that we waste in materials, the less efficient that we are in refurbishing these units is waste. It's material waste, but it's also financial waste. So for us as a company, we're incentivized to do this very efficiently and effectively. So we're putting out like new units every single time while minimizing the amount of materials and effort that has to go into that cycle. So that's kind of our circular economy that we hinge on, and it's where sustainability for us really meets a pretty strong financial incentive, but also helps us to really prioritize what a lot of our customers are asking for, which is a solution that doesn't have a high percentage of it ending up in a landfill. So that brings me to Flex. So we will spend a decent bit of time here, and we'll have a video actually in a second that goes through what Flex is. But I think the best way I've heard it summarized, over the past 5 or so years is it's the Legos of temporary space. So it literally can be configured however you need it for your site. You can have as small as an 8-foot by 20-foot box, which is what we have here at the show this week. And it can go all the way up to a 40,000 square foot facility with relative ease, right? And the beauty of it is the customer, you can add walls where you want. We'll talk about some of these specifics here in a second. You can add walls where you want. You can have very purposeful climate control. It's a very efficient building in how it's structured. We'll talk about the fact that it is an all metal product, non-combustible, doesn't grow mold, lasts well beyond 30 years. So we'll go through those in a second, but I think this video does a pretty good job of capturing really what Flex does, and hopefully it'll keep us awake here as we go through the back end of the presentation. So.
But wouldn't it be great if that space was completely flexible to your needs? We're talking length, width, and height, plus everything that goes with it, from windows and walls to furnishings and fixtures. Then you've got to see this. It's Flex, the latest innovation from Wilscot, and it's changing everything. Flex is the ultimate in flexible, modern, efficient workspace. For starters, it lets you keep your footprint as small as you need and still stack as high as 3 stories. Plus, you can scale the building up or down as your project progresses and your needs change. Now look inside. This space is nice. You can create vast open expanses with lots of natural light, or partition the space any way you choose with sleek glass and steel panels. Furniture, screens, energy-saving LED lighting with automatic switches, carpeting, stairs, and ramps. We provide everything to make your building attractive, efficient, and functional right away. What kind of space do you need? Flex does that. And that. And that. Yep, that too. With Flex, what you see is a solution that saves you lots of time and money on everything from configuration to delivery to installation to removal. What your people see is an upscale space with clean lines, nice lighting, and great-looking interiors. A place where they want to work. That's Flex. And it's only a phone call away. Wilscot. Our solutions are ready to work. So from day one, you're ready to work.
That's our Flex product, right? I think that does a great job in about 2.5 minutes of summarizing what it can do, and we'll go through some facilities management specific use cases here in a second. But when you look at Flex, I think the best way to picture it is this is a 8x20 steel frame. It's a panelized product, so think about every 3 feet you can customize. You can put a window in there. You can put a door, you can put a solid steel panel, you can put a smaller window in there. So these are pressure fit panels, no fasteners, it's 4-inch insulated foam. Again, it does not grow mold, it is fire retardant, so it's a very safe product. The not growing mold piece is actually huge. So if you think about some of these older office trailers that sit out for 4, 5, 6 years, in a lot of cases, that can become a health issue for customers if you get a leak or something like that. This is a watertight product that ultimately prioritizes that employee health and safety. It's also easy to clean. So these all metal walls, if you think about it, wiping down a metal wall versus if you were to take a wet rag to one of these walls in here, I think everybody knows which would be a little bit easier and give you more confidence that that space was clean at the end of the task. When you think about it from an efficiency standpoint, and we'll show you some examples of what this looks like, but Flex has very individual HVAC modules. So we can, if you want an entire 20-foot wall of HVAC modules, we can put in an entire 20-foot wall of panels. So what that allows you to do is create very customized temperature zones. A lot of times when you're building temporary space and even in permanent space, you end up carving it up with all these offices and conference rooms. It creates airflow problems, it creates temperature problems. Somebody's going to be uncomfortable. One end of the building, they'll be freezing, and the other end of the building, they'll be sweating, right? What Flex allows you to do is when you create these offices and these conference rooms, you can actually put individual HVAC and climate into these spaces and let that person control it. And because they're small enough HVAC units, they're extremely energy efficient, so they're not going to raise your energy bill a ton. And again, when you think about from an efficiency standpoint, if half the building isn't working that particular day, or you have people that are in and out of a space, you can just shut the HVAC unit off in that particular end, or put it on a very low setting, right? And save some energy ultimately on your bill. Some smaller pieces here that didn't get into in the video. So even little things like the roof of Flex, it has a roof coating that reflects 93% of sunlight. So typically with a steel box, if anybody's been in a container in Phoenix, Arizona in the summer, it'll get to 150 plus degrees. Flex is reflecting sunlight, and because it is a steel box, we want to make sure that it's not just absorbing heat and making it more difficult to cool. So 93% of that sunlight is reflected up top. And then as hit on the video, and we're gonna spend some time reiterating this point, one of the benefits of Flex, or the beauties of Flex, is that you can use a very small footprint. So where you don't have space to put a legacy temporary product like a mobile office or a double wide, you can actually go up with Flex. So if you really need that space for your people, but you can't really go out, Flex allows you to kind of work around the space that you're given and ultimately place this product in a way that best suits your needs. All right, so this next one, we're going to dive into health and hygiene. So another question for the crowd. How many people have used one of these guys? Come on, most of you, right? All right, so a Porta-John, right? This is the typical site solution for almost any industry, right? It's quick, it's easy. You see them at everything from stadium events to if you are popping down a temporary guard shack or something like that, put a porta potty behind it or a Porta-John behind it, and you're good to go. It's not an ideal solution. I think most would avoid this at all costs if possible, or if you had some alternative, right? How many people would rather use a facility like that? All right, see some head nods. We're getting there, getting better as we go. So yes, this is what we realized, particularly through the pandemic. So Wilscot Mobile Mini has been in the restroom business for decades, right? But this really took a heightened effect during the pandemic when people were very conscientious about social distancing. Hand wash stations became a staple on a lot of our customers' projects. Hand sanitizer became a staple in Porta-Johns and things like that. And what we found is that as customers kind of woke up to that, and particularly their employees, they were having their employees actually come to them and say, I don't want to work on a site where I'm using a Porta-John in freezing cold weather every day. And so this kind of all too common solution, we're starting to really see that dynamic change. And we do partner with certain companies that provide Porta-Johns. We don't do it directly, but we will partner with companies to provide this for our customers where they want it. But ultimately, what we found is, 3 or 4 years ago, it was 65, 70% of our customers were using this as a primary restroom solution. That's already down to about 50%. So we're seeing that changing dynamic. And then when you think about how employees are viewing their employer through this lens, right, 85% of employees correlate restroom quality to workplace productivity, right? And right, wrong, or indifferent on that statement, right? If employees are saying, this is a place where I can come to work, feel comfortable, be more productive, have nicer, more permanent facilities, this is ultimately what we want to be able to offer them. And so we offer Flex products that as restroom modules. So Flex, another advantage of it, you can actually configure it as a 2-unit ADA restroom. But we also offer everything from a 8 by 24 foot kind of traditional restroom trailer all the way up through large format 60 by 12 foot wide restroom trailers that have multiple stalls, urinals, whatever it may be. So when you think about this, climate controlled, hot water, all the things that you might expect out of a permanent facility, but very quickly and temporarily deployed right to your site or your project, whatever you may need. And again, this gives employees that kind of comfort as they're on site to feel like they're using traditional and permanent facilities without going to a porta-john that could be 150 degrees in Phoenix or could be negative 20 in Minneapolis. As we look kind of to the future of our products, so again, sticking with sustainability, health and hygiene, climate, things like that, one of the big areas of focus, and this is a prevalent theme even at this show here, is power, right? How are we getting power to these sites? With commercial real estate or brick and mortar, it's a very simple equation. You run power to the building. Wherever that power is coming from is a different story, but you run it to the building, you're good to go. With temporary space, typically your solution, at least for the first 3 to 6 months, is going to be a diesel generator. It's extremely loud and noisy. Employees, quite frankly, when that is running, aren't going to be able to work if that's anywhere near the exterior walls of the building. The carbon emissions piece is pretty obvious, and then when you just think about the sheer cost of refueling a generator, oftentimes on a weekly or semi-weekly basis, it's significant. So cost, noise, and ultimately productivity, and then carbon emissions, 3 major issues with temporary power solutions today. It's been a big focus for us over the past couple of years, and actually about 2 months ago at the World of Concrete show, we announced our solar rack solution. So as seen there on the screen, this is paired with Flex. This is a very multi-purpose solution. So the beauty of this solar platform is that yes, primarily it is solar powered, right? But it also has a battery backup that functions in the same way a battery energy storage system might. So United Rentals, Balt have battery energy storage system solutions. Picture that as just a big lithium-ion battery that you charge, and instead of a generator running all day, the building runs efficiently off the battery. So we have that battery backup built in there. With solar power, it is compatible with a generator. It's compatible with grid power. So let's say a customer doesn't want to be 100% solar, maybe your ESG goal or your particular needs are just to have 30%, 40% solar power. We can do that. We can make this primarily sustainable energy solution, and you can back it up with cheaper grid power if that's more cost effective for you, or you can even put a backup generator if you are in a place like Baltimore, Maryland, where the day varies pretty heavily one to the next in terms of rain and weather. So exciting product that we recently unveiled that'll be available to a lot of our customers about middle of this year. So we're excited to roll that out. But we're also looking at some of the more nuanced places on our products. So EV charging has been a major request from our customers. Can we just make our existing units EV charger ready? This is another product middle of this year that we'll roll out. So this EV charger can be added to any of our office and storage products very simply. So the customer can just request it when they place the order. We can add that to the unit, and then they now have a job site where if an employee is driving an electric vehicle, or in some cases, your fleet that you own is electric or EV ready, you're now equipped to do that on the site. And then the final one, this is a really small one again, but this hopefully shows you the attention to detail that we have as an organization. I mentioned this earlier, a lot of companies are running power to containers, right? They're drilling holes in our containers, and ultimately what happens is it no longer makes it weather tight, it leaks, we've got to try and patch it up. It's also not very safe, right, to run bare Romex through a sharp metal hole in the side of a wall. So just to give you an idea, we're even going to this level of detail where we're going to start providing grommets or kind of pass-throughs for electrical on our containers in just a couple of months here to make those power ready however they may need it. All right, getting to the home stretch here. So when you think about sustainability, our units are kind of just the beginning. We spend a lot of time talking about the refurbishment process, what we do to minimize material waste and things like that. But one of the big pieces that's largely been ignored in the broader industry, and even as a company we really just started paying attention to in the past decade, is what goes in the units. So showing you some more relatively ugly site images, right, of how these spaces come together. We've had customers do everything from the picture on the right, where they're actually taking a door, nailing it to a 2x4 and using that as a planning table, to the left where it's just a busy collection of folding tables and chairs jammed into that space, right? They're very convoluted job sites. Ultimately, when you look at what these projects end up being confounded by, it's endless procurement. Typically, it's the kind of first person on site that has to deal with this. So what did we miss? What desk didn't we order? Do we need a TV monitor? You're going on the endless Amazon, Target, Walmart hunt to get all these products onto your site. Typically, they are single use. So asset management from site to site, even the biggest companies that we deal with in North America have issues with assets going missing, getting from one site to the next, getting damaged in transport, right? A lot of issues that can happen as you do that. Mismatched furnishings, that's a really big issue just from an employee standpoint, and especially if you're having your customers in a space, conveying something that is clean, cohesive, has matching furniture, looks like it should all be there is a really big deal. And then finally, if we go back to the sustainability piece of waste and wasting materials, one of the biggest things we see when our units come back is all that furniture that a customer may or may not have purchased. They either send it back in the office building, which ultimately we have to dispose of because we can't keep that, or it ends up in the dumpster. So they're buying it for a very short period of time. Ultimately, it ends up in a landfill. It's extremely wasteful, and so a big issue that's kind of confounded the industry for many years now. So as you jump to how we address that, right? Turnkey is another key piece of the, again, very wordy title, but turnkey sustainable solution. So when you think about an office trailer, when you think about a container, everything that you see pictured there from that bird's eye view, we can offer. We want to make sure that we're giving customers everything they need from day one, so they're not going through a lot of those challenges or issues that we outlined on the prior slide. When you think about it from an emission standpoint, again, most people don't think of us as a logistics company, but we drive millions of miles a year to deliver our units. We are oftentimes delivering all of these products to a customer in the unit that they're receiving. So we're using that mobile office or that container as a delivery vehicle. There is no follow behind, no wasted mileage. There is no need to send a box truck, right, full of furniture to get there. We deliver it in the unit. It shows up ready to go from day one. We warehouse everything much like we do our units, so it's maintained regularly. We have almost miniature maintenance shops used for these value-added products and services. So we fix tables, we fix chairs, we make sure we get as long of a life out of them as possible. So again, they don't end up in a dumpster in a landfill. And then finally, when we think about when is that product no longer useful to us, when would it be negative for a customer to receive an older or more dated chair, we look to either donate these products or ultimately dispose of them in a responsible way. So we take a lot of that pressure off the customer to do these things and ultimately do it where sustainability is at the forefront. Just going into a few of the things, tying back to the trends that we went through earlier. So throughout the pandemic, we looked very closely at air purification. For many of you that were flying at that point in time or just kind of reading the news about flying during the pandemic, there was all this talk about, is it HEPA filters, MERV 13 filters? What's the right way to make sure that you're breathing clean air in all the spaces that you encounter? And we went through a lot of trial and error with this. I think our first gut reaction was just take a HEPA or a MERV 13 filter, throw it in our existing HVAC, and all will be great. Two major problems with that. One, those filters, because of how thick they are and what they ultimately do to clean the air, they have to be replaced every 2 weeks. We struggle today to get people to replace air filters once a month. So that was one issue, is just getting that maintenance. If it's a dirty filter, it's not going to do its job, and ultimately that defeats the whole purpose. And then the second piece, tying back to workplace productivity, is that ultimately, if I were to ask anybody in this room what air filter is being used for this room, or even in your own home, most probably wouldn't be able to give an answer. And what we realized was when you just change a filter, yes, that procurement manager may realize what they're putting into the space and that this is air being purified regularly, but the employee that's actually working in the space has no idea. And for them to feel comfortable and confident that the person, sneezing 10 feet away from them, that air is actually being cleaned, it needed to be visible and it needed to be present in the space. And so we started offering this air purification device, purifies roughly 750 square feet with one of them at an air recycling rate of about 3 times per hour. So think about that as a 60-12. It's one of our more common mobile office products. One of these is adequate to put in that space. And this just took off for us. When we started offering these, we were reordering every month to try and keep them in stock and deliver to our customers. But ultimately what it does at the end of the day is it allows for your employees to walk into a space, see an air purifier on. It's very quiet, so I won't say they hear it, but they see it when they walk into the space, and ultimately they know that the air around them is being cleaned. They can be comfortable and ultimately focus on the work that they need to do at the end of the day. Ergonomic furnishings, we talked about that a little bit in the trends section. So thinking about it from a standing desk standpoint, comfortable chairs, things like that. We do offer a fully powered standing desk solution. We also offer a full lineup of different chairs at various kind of premiums and feature sets. Oh, am I getting cut off? Is that my Oscars cue? There we go, perfect. I promise I'm stretching 2 more slides. So ergonomic furnishings, that's a big one. Again, keeping your employees happy, giving them a space where they can stand up throughout the day. We offer this in everything from a standard 5-foot wide configuration all the way up through larger format L desks, which is particularly popular right when multiple monitors are in play, and that is very frequent in the workplace today. And then the final piece, we talked about mismatched furniture. Again, just having the space feel drab and dated, walking into something that's very modern, clean, everything matches. It feels like it was purpose-built, like this is a space that people are intended to live and work in. That is a huge benefit to working with us. It is a cohesive lineup. And then as you jump over to the storage side or the container side, really 3 key areas that we looked at. Storage containers, it is a massive box, and like many people's closets, stuff gets thrown in there all the time, and it ends up very messy after just a number of days or weeks. So the first thing we looked at in terms of storage is how do we keep it organized? So through shelving, and we'll talk about our Pro Rack solution on the next slide, but how do we keep that very organized for our customers and give them something that is not only easy to go in and find what they need, but also safe, where you're not tripping over pallets or things that are maybe dropped on the ground, whatever it may be. Building on that safety piece, Mobile Mini for decades has been the industry leader in site security through their tri-cam locking system on their containers. So picture that as like a big bank vault door on their containers. They've been the industry leader in container security since the 90s, right? Where we've started to evolve that is we've looked at things like motion sense lighting on the site. So think about that as a theft deterrent. So not only can people safely get into the container now, but when thieves potentially go to break into that container, the lights pop on, they think it could be video recorded or whatever that may be, and hopefully that thief then runs away. If they do ultimately make it to the container, again, you've got the best security solution in the market built into that door. And then the final piece there, when you think about coverage, right, this has been another kind of big one for us in the past few years in terms of growth. We do offer contents insurance to our customers as well. So very, very small monthly rate, $15-20 a month. You can get $20,000 of coverage. So if something does ultimately get stolen from your container, it's a hassle-free, no deductible type of coverage where we can replace those items for you or cut you a check to replace those items. The last couple of slides here, I know I've said that a few times now, but Pro Rack is one that I do want to hit on. This was born out of customer feedback. So typical container shelving today is some wire racking thrown in there, usually with some 2x12s strewn across it. What we realized again was that customers are working out of this space. They're using it for everything from like pipe storage and wood storage all the way through like tool cribs where they need to store all their facilities kind of management tools and things like that. And so Pro Rack is another kind of panelized product where basically, if you can see the picture there, we have these 3-foot panels that just hook into that top rail. These panels can be configured however you want. You can actually tilt the shelf up to create a 45-degree angle for pipe and material storage. You can have it obviously at a 90-degree plane to do standard shelving. The bottom shelf is actually much deeper. It's a standard desk width and it's at standard desk height. So you can use that as a desk and a workspace if that's ultimately what you need. And then the final piece there, it does fold completely flat and it has integral peg hooks that you can pop in there, so you can actually use it as a full tool wall and tool storage. Again, very dynamic and easy to adjust on site, so if your needs change, you can absolutely do that. The entire system is power ready, so it has power raceways, so if you need to run power, say you're charging those tools, you can absolutely do that. And so a very dynamic system that whatever you may be using that container for, you can adjust it or adapt it to your needs, not just on delivery, but as your project progresses. And then tying it all together, probably the tiniest font of the whole presentation, so save the best for last, but this is kind of a very congested view of everything that we can do for our customers. So from the space solutions and flex that we spent a lot of time talking about today, to the containers, to the double wide office that's kind of pulled back there, basically anything that provides shelter, cover, workspace, storage space, on your projects, we can do that. We even have the ability, we didn't get into it today, but we even have the ability to do refrigerated storage. So we do over the road reefer trailers as well as cold storage containers. So a whole plethora of solutions that we can offer you. everything, available to discuss here at the show. So that's everything that I've got today. Hope you guys will stop by the booth, really chat with our local team. I do appreciate your time sitting through this all with me with a relatively smaller group. But at this point, I'll go ahead and I will open it up if there are any questions or comments that maybe you have for me here in the last 5 minutes. So in terms of receiving the actual telecommunications lines or getting them there? So that Flex product actually has one of the simplest data and telecommunications hookups. It's one box sits on the outside of it that you can run, whether it's like a Cat 6 or a Cat 5 or a telephone line right into it, and then all 4 posts of that product have the receptacles built into it for the Cat 6 and the telephone line. Does that answer your question, or? I should. There you go. 1025. Yeah. Perfect. And you can actually see that. We have the product on site, so you can see that up close.
The EV chargers are those going to be able to do more than just electric cars, and what I mean by that is lifts, forklifts, those kind of things.
Yeah, so we are looking at trying to make it as standard as possible to hit the max number of products. Ostensibly, the biggest kind of gating factor to an EV charger is getting a outlet big enough to power it. And so once we get that outlet in there, you could ostensibly put any charging interface with it and have it work well. Anything else? Good. Well, again, thank you guys for sitting through this and listening to me for the past hour. I really appreciate it and hope to see you stop by our booth. Thank you.